Hello, I'm your host, Effie Pilarino, and today I have the great pleasure to link over to Washington to an old friend, Catherine Foster, who we met, I think, 4 years ago in definitely an exotic place. We'll talk about that. And Catherine will be coming back to Switzerland and even closer to me to Fribourg. So, welcome, Catherine.
Thank you. It's so nice to see you again. And isn't it funny that we met in Oman, even though we were practically neighbors back in Freiburg at the day?
100%. The first blockchain symposium where we met wonderful people, really a global, diverse group. And I must say, I personally remember meeting a few remarkable women
Yes.
talking about, that there aren't enough women in crypto, man. Maybe there aren't enough of them trading, but there's definitely enough of them involved in blockchain as a technology and, experimenting, piloting, designing implementations in important areas like yourself. Tell us, Catherine, a bit about your background and how, when I think of you, I think of a person who is always focused on SDGs and is always focused on how can we use technology, cutting edge technologies for a purpose. I know myself the projects that you have been and the initiatives that you've been involved, but tell us a little bit about the past so we get a flavor of the kind of projects that you've been involved and your background, of course.
Oh, with pleasure. Yeah, to me, Oman was sort of a meeting of the minds, and it was a very diverse crowd, including, at least half women, I believe, and also the subjects that were covered. And what brought me to there is basically, 35 years of professional development. I grew up in Northern Ontario, in Canada, actually, and I'm from a sort of Métis background. I'm Swiss Canadian now. And it was that sort of surrounded by nature and with sort of an interest in Indigenous knowledge that brought me through my original intention to be a sort of environmental scientist and journalist. I wanted to sort of merge that investigative element for public understanding. And this was at the time of acid rain and the hole in the ozone layer. So, that was sort of the era I grew up in. And I went into geography because it allowed me to do both the physical sciences and geographic information systems, which were just starting at the time, as well as social, economic, political data. And I was one of the first ones at that time to sort of merge GIS systems with economic social data in one of my projects, sort of looking at community vulnerability around forestry. And those were some of my first experiences. And when I also took time off and went to India to do a study on gender and women's education, and just really had a thirst for traveling at the time, but always with a focus on impact and volunteering for specific causes. And it was when I was doing my doctoral work that I started investigating, stakeholder management and information, and using the internet to be more inclusive at the very cusp of that. And I went in to interview the head of the NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, which was just formed, the head of the side agreement on environment, to ask how he was going to undertake his stakeholder investigations. And he offered me a job on the spot. And that was my foray into diplomacy. I became a Canadian diplomat focusing on human security and climate change. And human security at the time included landmines, war-affected children, gender, but also CSR, corporate social responsibility, which was just emerging, and conflict diamonds. So the whole Kimberley process. So I really cut my teeth on building out those mechanisms, and also representing Canada on climate change in the US in 2000, when we thought Al Gore was going to be president and there was going to be a nice umbrella working group. And it was there that I had to do my first real pivot professionally, because not only did the US pull out of the Kyoto process, but 9/11 happened, and that changed the whole landscape around what was considered to be security issues, right? And our vulnerabilities. And when Canada pulled out of the Kyoto process, I basically left the diplomatic corps and moved to Switzerland to start my family. And that's where, coming into the Swiss ecosystem, which is incredibly innovative, but also very conservative in a way, where most people in their careers have to follow a very specific trajectory. You have to have the French and the Swiss German and the High German. So all of this merged to make me realize, okay, I wasn't just going to get a job like that. So I threw myself into the ecosystem, just learning and doing anything I could. And I advised, I did design thinking, I did communications for the Swiss science centers, EPFL. I taught at l'Haute École de Gestion, at the International Institute of Management and Technology. I helped build out one of the first microfinance banks in Namibia, and the Swiss Impact and Capacity Building Facility. So just basically taking on any role that would just let me learn and merge at the nexus of technology, climate, sustainable development, impact. And so that brought me to the Climate Kick, which was the EU's sort of clean tech accelerator, but public-private partnership. And I became a lead for Switzerland, then across Europe. And that was exciting, because we were building out thousands of startups, many of whom have really gone on to great success, as well as public-private partnerships. And to me, this was really the right business model for really advancing sort of technology and impact. But again, I had to leave in 2017 because my husband was posted to the World Bank on behalf of Switzerland. So that's where I seized that opportunity. I'd started looking into blockchain and to integrated technologies altogether for natural capital and climate. And I took that opportunity to say, okay, I'm just going to throw myself directly into a couple of startups and coalitions and initiatives. And here we are.
Amazing, amazing. I mean, our roads have crossed through many initiatives, the most recent ones with the Green Digital Finance Alliance, where you were deeply involved there. And now with your recent engagement with the Open Earth Foundation. Tell us a little bit, not a little bit, tell us about the Open Earth Foundation, and maybe some of our listeners know about it because of the recent fundraiser that definitely caught the eye of those, at least on Twitter. But tell us first about the foundation.
Sure. There's a bit of a backstory there. If you don't mind, I'll go into, because when I was with the Green Digital Finance Alliance, which was set up by the United Nations Environment Program and Ant Financial, this was a wonderful opportunity to see what was really happening at that high level. And just prior to that, I had been with a startup called BLOC, Blockchain Labs for Open Collaboration, and it was the open element. And then with the GDFA, it was the sort of collaborative space that really piqued my interest, but also led me to see where some of the gaps in the landscape were. So after BLOC, we won the MIT Solve Fellowship, and then I joined GDFA and got to know even more people in that ecosystem, the climate ecosystem, basically, and green finance. And I realized that there are sort of three trajectories happening that weren't merging. One was, emerging tech for climate and SDGs, which is where I was really working. And then there was Fintech, which is largely merging out of the financial space. And that's where the GDFA really showed me that there was this gap between the two. And then we also had green finance. So, seeing the merging of those three trajectories was really exciting to me. And then when I met Martin Weinstein in New York during Climate Week last year, we had sort of been operating in the same circles, always focusing on open collaboration and open platforms to advance the Paris Agreement, particularly the carbon markets, the nested carbon accounting system that would be necessary under Paris. And that's part of what I was building out with BLOC and with the World Bank. So basically last year, we were invited to speak on the same panel around Africa and the Chad region. So it was really interesting to have done all of this, and all of a sudden we're on the same panel and saying pretty much the same things. And he had, Martin Weinstein was the founder of Yale Open Labs, which had started a number of initiatives, which we've now sort of taken into an umbrella under Open Earth Foundation. So, and what it is working on is basically setting up as a not-for-profit that is using cutting edge and digital technologies, as well as that multi-stakeholder collaboration, as well as open platforms. We're advancing the open platforms and using them towards sort of climate goals, and to really integrate some of the solution space out there. So, we have solar, we have climate finance, we have climate accounting. What we're trying to do is not only scale that, but integrate the solution space so that it's opening up the pathway for all of the many exciting solutions that are out there. And we are basically set up in California as a not-for-profit, but I'll be bringing the antenna to Switzerland. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, not at all. I mean, it's just amazing how things happen very slowly for a very long time, and then suddenly the pace changes. And I remember discussing with Arun Krishnakumar about 2.5 years ago, when he was a partner at Greenshore Capital, that he was suggesting to the other partners that they should launch a VC fund dedicated to climate. And at the time, there was none around. And now, things have changed. And I say that because, of course, what you're doing at the Open Earth Foundation, it's not a VC, but it's really creating this ecosystem that links all the pieces of the puzzle. As you said, around accounting, it can be around financing, and it can be all the other types of solutions that can complete the puzzle. But tell us a bit more about the drop, the what's it called, the climate drop auction that happened, and you guys raised I think $6.6 million.
Yeah.
How did that work, and where would these funds, how these funds are going to be deployed?
Thanks. Yeah, this was really exciting because, being a nonprofit, while we do have some projects that can build out into the market and actually, can attract venture capital, the whole model is about collaboration and being a nonprofit. So it's about blended finance. And we've been doing grants writing, everything from Carnegie to Climate Works and making the cut. But because we're focused on systems, we never fit into any one of the particular thematic silos, if you will. Most of these grants are about specific projects. And so we could apply under our solar project or under our carbon markets project. But for the foundation itself, funding is complex because systems-based do not fit into silos, really. And the way that tech is building out in this paradigm in sort of venture capital is a little bit different. So what we tried to do is shift that. And we were very fortunate to come into contact with Social Alpha Foundation. Martin Woodall was already in touch with Jehan Chu, one of the co-founders, last year, who had already committed to a specific amount of funding that he would then match with his community. And his community comes out of art dealing, which is a really interesting nexus here. Like these are communities that normally do not merge other than in communicating about climate change and whatnot. But the art dealing environment really is a world unto itself that I'm still getting my head around. But Jehan Chu had a vision of the need for climate action, particularly in the crypto space. And he, I think, in his community, did quite well during the crypto boom. And so they wanted to pay it back in a way, as well as pave the way to climate action. So the dialogue sort of started on, we were going to have just a basic fundraiser, invite the community to an online presentation and pitch, and then ask for donations for Open Earth. And then Martin and Jehan started brainstorming around the whole NFT environment because of the climate nexus and also the possibility of fundraising. So we thought, let's come together and actually allow the crypto community that's starting to understand the energy and climate impact of the different platforms and the NFT minting, especially when it's done on platforms using proof of work, the energy consumption, and sort of open up that dialogue. At the same time, invite the artist to donate the proceeds from a single piece of work to Open Earth. So it was a win-win. And we brought together an entire group of collaborators around this. And it was Nifty Gateway that actually offered to waive the fees and to make very specific accommodations because they're also trying to make that transaction to lower energy intensive because they're basically on the Ethereum network. And we also knew that Ethereum was working on Ethereum 2.0. So it just seemed the timing was right to come together to address the issue more systematically through Carbon Drop. So what we did was advocate for a shift in the NFT minting to reduce the footprint of open editions. So basically, and raising awareness about the issue. They waived their fees for the collaborating artists who donated the proceeds of their works, and they did one-to-one NFTs with and then we adjusted to single ETH transaction, so reducing even further, and then of course offsetting the rest while the transitions are in place. The artists and the group also made a statement to the community and actually outlined a 7-point call of action, which is available online for other artists and community members using NFTs to how to operate while that transition happens. Because offsets are only a part of the broader systemic solution. And, that transition is really hard to make on live platforms. So we have to be a little bit flexible there while we make that transition. And what we ended up with was a really fantastic event. We had Render providing free Octane services and tokens to all artworks that were, and the artists that were leveraging their tools. And they also sponsored 100% of the offsets used for the auction. And those were sourced from Creole. And then we had Josh Biak, who had a vision and engineered the whole model. And so we all worked very tightly together on this, including with the artists. And we had Alex Tyson, who was, produced a video, a film about the environmental impact of Bitcoin network. He actually did the film for us about the artists. So we had this amazing growing group of collaborators. And in the end, we had 8 artists who were part of this drop, including Beeple, which was really astounding, because people, as most people know, had the record NFT drop, NFT auction at Christie's, which raised $69 million for him. So his work brought in $6 million for us. And it was a really exciting event to be part of. And everyone basically just pitching in wherever they could, because it was, we didn't know what to expect. It was the first time something this collaborative was done in the space. And it was just a really awesome outcome, and really a great merging of communities.
We will add in the comments all the links to the entities that you mentioned, because these entities are new, and it's worthwhile checking out both the film that you spoke about the Bitcoin's proof of work, and the energy consumption, which is definitely a topic that is quite controversial,
yes.
If you like. And it's very interesting to see whether what you have done is copied, if you like, in different contexts, and whether this will lead to more awareness and more initiatives that are finding creative ways to use technology for good, and use what we would call artists, whether it's a painter, a musician, a singer, that can use their brand to point out that we can do a lot of good through these open ecosystems. And I want to circle to your involvement and your passion for impact investing, and what that means for you, because everybody understands a different thing in their mind when they say or they hear impact investing. So what is impact investing for you?
It's interesting because, I've never considered myself to be a financial expert, or even a part of that domain. And yet I'm being drawn more and more into it, which is really exciting. So, but it requires me to learn a new taxonomy and a new systems, right? From my perspective. But it seems like such a natural progression, because the technologies and the capacities that we're building out with emerging tech are underscoring the capacity to understand impact, to be able to verify that impact in a transparent way, and to allow investors to have more insights into the initiatives and projects that they're supporting or investing in. And I think overall, it's basically, again, systems perspective within the impact investing space. And so what I've been building out, with well, not me personally, but the initiatives I've been involved in and helping to lead, I get to ask the naive questions. So when we were with the GDFA, building out the green bonds, the digital green bonds framework and toolbox, working with HSBC and Sophie Blackstad and Marianne Haar, being able to ask the right questions about, what a system solution for end-to-end digital green bonds, that sort of made me realize also, to date, there's no end-to-end solution. We have issuance, we have verification, different parts along the solution space, but the capacity, for example, in green bonds, it could be tenfold if we're able to do and stitch that together. And so that brings me to start working in I do a lot of pro bono advising, and I've been working with Evercity and Solstrom. And Evercity, I think, will be working with Open Earth now and perhaps with one or two of the international organizations, to really look at piloting an end-to-end digital green bond, for example. And then that same model, that same approach can be applied to different types and forms of investment. So this is, it's always, to me, it's a very lateral perspective that I bring in, being able to see from a systems perspective and also seeing where and how certain gaps are located that we need to be able to address going forward. And this also goes then into carbon markets, right? There is no single carbon market. We have a plethora of international mechanisms and accounting systems that need to be not interoperable, but integrated, right, and nested, so that communities can come together to make those investments into initiatives and projects to meet the targets of the Paris Agreement. So I'm always sort of coming from the Paris or the SDG and sort of reverse engineering.
Great. And when I say impact investing, because of my financial background, of course, the first sort of interpretation is really about capital, allocating capital. But these days, I think much more broadly, investing is all about resources. It can be human resources. It can be other types of resources. So it's much broader than the strict sense of how you allocate the capital and how you manage that kind of capital to have impact. On that note, Catherine, I want to thank you for this discussion, and I look forward to keeping up with what the Open Earth Foundation is going to be doing and how it impacts the entire ecosystem, because it seems that it is linked with different actors. Before we close, tell me, what is the next step? What is going to follow after this fundraiser? What can we look forward to?
The funds for Open Earth really open up the possibilities for us to advance our mission and our specific initiatives. In addition, so carbon accounting, solar, and also integrating those, and also carrying forward activities like the Collabathon with partners. What it also does is free me to individually to continue some of the advising I'm doing independently, and also to participate in the ESMA working group, for example, and a UNEP working group, in order to to have that perspective across the different landscapes. And the next concrete step for me will be helping to get OEF functioning. Now we can actually hire, an executive assistant and manager. We can hire an engineer and a developer. So we're actually able to move forward on the concrete steps. And then I'm also able to now to make that move back to Switzerland to operate as sort of the European antenna, both within the Swiss ecosystem and internationally across Europe. So that'll be a very concrete step that happens in July. And I'm really looking forward to doing that and to looking to specific partnerships and collaborations within that space.
Great. We can't wait to have you back home, so to speak, here in the Alps and the home of, I guess, one of the biggest blockchain global hubs, and definitely Switzerland is also a sustainability hub too. So I guess it will be wonderful.
It'll be
Thank
awesome.
you so much, Catherine.
Thank you, Effie.